You want to make your clients happy, just like communicate with them constantly.
Right.
You want to make your employees happy, pay attention to them, communicate with them. But that's really the key to it. Even in business, when where you don't think about that, like this is just a job or this is just a client. And the more you learn about people, the better of a client, especially in our business, which is a lot of trying to interpret what people want.
Welcome to Beyond the Blueprint, powered by Contractors, Closers, and Connections, Orlando. Join me for in-depth interviews with some of the top commercial real estate and development executives in the industry. We uncover their success stories, their strategies, and their lessons learned along the way. Gain valuable insight whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out. Beyond the Blueprint, we are sitting down with Clark Stranahan with C4 Architecture. I'm your host, Branson Bowen, and this is episode 2. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel to allow for more valuable content in the episodes to come. Let's jump into episode 2, Clark.
Sounds good.
So we're going to get into some questions about just C4, your experience, not only as an architect, but as predominantly a business owner, an entrepreneur, someone who's starting your own gig, right? Let's go into like what in the early years that looked like for you, and what were some of the hurdles that you kind of either had to overcome early on, or things that you thought you didn't have to overcome and you kind of had to address them.
Yeah. We kind of had a jump start. That was probably one of the best things. It wasn't a one-person gig at the very beginning. It was myself. We had 2 other people. We were taking over an already established firm, even though it was pretty small.
Sure.
It's that like first step, which is the hardest. Like, where do we find an office space? Where do we do this? Where do we do that? We kind of had all that figured out. So that was the good part. And we had a client, at least one, and a few more along the way that happened pretty quickly. One of the first big obstacles we did have to overcome was the 2008 to 2010 economic, disaster that we all kind of went through. I think it was some NBC or somebody did a poll in 2009 of like the worst professions to be in, and literally architect was number one. And I'm like, really?
Turn off the news.
Really? But it was pretty plain to see that was a huge challenge for everybody. I mean, it was across the board, but architects are expendable, quickly.
Right.
You just, they're just people dropping like flies.
Sure.
In firms too. So that was the biggest challenge for us, was just how are we going to ride this out, and when is it going to end?
Right.
Nobody really knew kind of what the turnaround was going to be like. So that was the biggest, and there were a lot of times where, we had just had to lean on each other as a firm to stay afloat. There were a lot of sacrifices made along the way. But looking back on it, had I known then what I know now, I would have felt a little bit more confident. There's cycles. And Orlando's been in a great position to rebound. We've got an industry that won't go away as hard as we try to kick it. Tourism, people love coming here, and there's a lot of investment that's already been done that makes it easier to do that. But business wise was a challenge. So we had planned for growth. So we moved into a new office. We'd hired more people. And then it was just like damage control. How do we patch the ship here and ride this out until things turn around? And it was really just a lot of hard work. I mean, was there a strategy to it? I mean, the strategy was just work your way through it, head down, and do the most you can. But also, trying to pick and choose. We had one client that stiffed us on a pretty big bill, and that was a learning experience. Like, okay, don't work with those sort of people again. We just had to work our way through it.
Yeah,
that was it.
Was there anything that you guys had to overcome that you didn't think or anticipate? Obviously, you couldn't have anticipated 2008, but like anything from whether it's hiring and firing and trying to choose the right people, Was there anything that you did not see coming that you had to address?
Um, we tried to anticipate things. The good thing about our work is it's a lot of our projects, even architecture, construction, both, they don't last but a few months. I mean, they last a little bit longer for construction than architecture, but so w- we're always 6 weeks away from being unemployed anyways.
Sure.
So there's not, if you're not comfortable with that, you're not cut out to do this.
Right.
You're always turning over. Like if the phone doesn't ring for the next month, we're in trouble.
Right.
But it does. You just have to have faith that that's going to keep on
Continues,
going. Yeah.
Was there any pivotal moment in your career where like this was something that really was going to set you up for the next season?
Yeah. In 2014, we had to make a decision whether we're staying in our old office, which was outside of downtown, or we were going to move someplace else. We were kind of co-located with one of our biggest clients at the time, but they were moving and they wanted us to move with them. And I knew if we wanted to get out of their shadow and kind of spread the wings a little bit, that we weren't going to want to do that. We can still continue to do work for them,
Sure.
but we had to make I thought at the time was a fairly big decision to move our office to downtown Orlando. And I remember thinking, like, of all of the things that could go wrong with that, like this company could, fire us and we're not doing any more work for them because we're not right next door to them. We could have employees that are like, that's too far of a drive. I don't want to go to downtown. What I failed to think of was all the good things that were going to come of
Sure.
that. And it was kind of the opposite. Like, we had a lot of clients that we found out were downtown. We're close to lots of other activities that benefited us. We had ways now that we could recruit from a lot further outside of our, kind of geographic area. And so that was a big gamble, or it felt like a big gamble at the time that paid off 10 times more than what I expected it to.
So looking back now and then where you're at in your career, what would you say your definition of success is today?
Yeah. I define success for myself as living your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when your abilities and your passions and your expertise and your intelligence all come together in just the right way, in really three different areas. One is where you live, and that is everywhere from the country you live in down to your city, your neighborhood, your house, like your physical environment. Like, does this match me as a person? And then what you do, what your vocation is, what do you spend your time doing? And are you doing a profession, or are you spending your time in a way that's fulfilling to kind of your core values? And then who you're with. So the people that you surround yourself with, are they people that you want to be around? Are they, propelling you to do more, to be a better person? Or are they pulling you back? Are they weighing you down? And when you can get all those three areas together with, your passion, your intelligence, and your abilities, that's success. And that, will that make you happy? I don't know. It will give you the best chance of happiness. Sure. And then from that will like the money or monetary side of things. To me, you have to be happy before you can be
Absolutely.
Wealthy, and not the other way around. Wealth isn't going to make you happy. I think that's kind of one of the misconceptions of success.
That goes into the next question.
And that's something that I thought was like, hey, if I get to a certain level, I'm going to feel better, right? It's going to make me happy. Well, all that does is just make you not worry about money. There are a million other things to worry about. And if you're not happy without money, you will not be happy with it.
Sure.
Right? That's not going to solve your problems.
Right.
I mean, it'll solve one, but trust me, there's enough other problems.
Oftentimes,
in the
I
world.
think money can magnify
Make
what
it
your
worse.
issue-
Right? There was a study done not too long ago, and it was like, what's the perfect income amount of income that leads to kind of the middle ground of happiness? And I think it was something fairly modest. It was like less than $100,000 a year. And in fact, once you got over a certain point, it made you less happy, right? Because they're just, people. You have to focus on your happiness, and then the rest of it flows from there.
As a famous rapper once said, more money, more problems.
Right? Yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bryce Knuth of Insurance Office of America. As a contractor or real estate owner in Florida, you've likely experienced the impact of rising insurance premiums year after year. With the challenging insurance marketplace, having a specialist who focuses on your industry is critical now more than ever before. If you'd like a second set of eyes on your current insurance program or don't have a relationship with your current broker, please contact Bryce Knuth at 407-697-6944 via call or text, or email bryce.knuth@ioausa.com. Don't let rising insurance costs catch you off guard. Reach out to Bryce today. So what, in your opinion, is something that, in building C4 and the company, and you're trying to choose the right hires and the candidates, we talked a little bit about this, do you look for in building long-term partnerships and relationships within your business?
Yeah. I think the key to just about anything, this is any relationship whatsoever, is just communication, right? You want to make your clients happy, just like communicate with them constantly.
Right.
You want to make your employees happy, pay attention to them, communicate with them all the time. You want to make your spouse and your kids happy, spend time with them, communicate with them, and that's hard to do sometimes. We're all stretched in a lot of different directions. Sure. And it's not always natural for us to, communicate our feelings and be vulnerable and those sort of things. But that's really the key to it. Even in business, when where you don't think about that, like this is just a job or this is just a client, like you can really connect with people if you get in a little bit deeper, like, they're telling you about something and you can just like, oh, how did that make you feel? Was that, and the more you learn about people, the better of a client, especially in our business, which is a lot of trying to interpret what people want. Right. And sometimes they're not very good about saying it, right? They'll tell you something and you'll give it to them and they'll be like, well, that's not really what I wanted. Well, okay. So again, just like the more you ask, and one of my things that I try to do more now, I heard somebody say, is ask one more question. Like, so just, you think you understand something, ask one more question, ask them why, or ask them, something. One, it leads to a better understanding of what they want. Sure. And also people like to be asked about stuff. Like they don't want to be in a conversation that's entirely one-sided. Right. So it works well, just trying to be a friend or, friendly to people. Sure. Makes a big difference.
I believe that candor kind of builds that depth in the foundation of the relationship, because you get to know someone, you get to listen to them and figure out what they're about, what their real interest. And really, a lot of times, at least in my experience, you're dealing with a client, you start to develop that candor of trying to learn about who they are and then what their long-term objective is, right? Because if there's this miscommunication up front, there's this rub, but there's this long-term, it's like, what's really the play? Like, what are you really trying to get at? There's an easier path forward. You've built this foundation in the relationship, the longevity, because, as well as in any construction project, you're together for a long time.
Right, right. You are not married to them, but you're dating, maybe even engaged. So yeah, the more you can communicate with people, I think is the key to it all.
How do you, like, what's the goals and the for C4? Like, where do you see it going? Where, how do you go about setting the big, bold goals and being, really not overly, like don't get over your skis, but
Mhm.
like being strategic on where you go.
Yeah. That's a real challenge because I think of architecture as um, a result of, a, from a business standpoint, a result of lots of other things, the economy, um, you know, mainly the economy, and just somewhat how society acts and moves. So a lot of our business is industrial, which 10 years ago, 12 years ago, there was one industrial building built in all of Orlando. This year, there'll be 20 or 30, right? And that's because of e-commerce and other things like that.
Sure.
I'm, as a business owner, not going to affect that sort of thing. I can't make e-commerce come around more so that I can have more business. Um, so it's hard for us to go out and say, okay, we're going to be at 100 people in 2 years. We're going to be at 500 people in 10 years. Setting those sort of goals kind of sets you up for failure because you just really don't have control over the numbers part of things. What you can control is retaining, good people in your organization, retaining your clients, getting the work done, doing the best that you can with what you've got, and then the growth comes from that.
Sure.
We have grown in certain ways that benefited us. From a strategic standpoint, we added some engineering disciplines to the office, which kind of rounds out our services and makes us hopefully more valuable to more clients.
Sure.
That was strategic. That was a long-term thing. We started that 6 or 8 years ago, and we're still, working towards kind of rounding out the team.
Mm-hmm.
But starting small is a good way to do it, and then as things start to work, then you fuel those fires and push forward in the areas that are being successful.
Well, I think that's kind of just very strategic as from an entrepreneurial standpoint is your ability to pivot, right? Because I think we can easily set these goals and we can have this, 3-5 year business plan put together. But I think just in the journey of business, especially in this industry, I mean, we know it ebbs and flows in different areas, and maybe you've got to do more office buildings and industrial buildings here. And maybe, you just got to kind of pick. But your ability to stay lean from a personnel, because you never want to lay people off.
Right. I always feel like we're 1 or 2 people short.
Yeah.
Right. So, which is good and bad. We do a lot of overtime, but it keeps us on our toes. And you don't want to get into that because, like I said, the biggest asset that we have are the people that work there. So if you lose that, you're losing a valuable resource.
Right.
It's a real challenge. But yeah, like you said, one of my mom's best favorite phrases is life is what happens when you have other plans. Mm-hmm. And so, making those plans, I think that was John Lennon.
Yeah.
Making those plans is you're tiptoeing with disaster, not disaster, but it's good to have a focus on a goal, but you do need to be flexible.
There's a quote. It says, disappointment is when you have unmet expectations.
Yeah.
And so you send that plan and then,
Right. Oh, I really wanted to do X or Y and it doesn't come about. Not because you didn't try hard or because you didn't do something right, but that's just
life.
It's life. That, there's only so many things you can control.
Sure. So as you're kind of going through that, whether it's building the business or, we're just talking generally in life, what is your kind of tips or strategies on how to deal with those setbacks and keeping a positive attitude while you're going through those scenarios?
Yeah. I had a personal investment I made one time and it didn't work out. And I would have normally probably been really disappointed by that. And I was like, this was a failure on my part. But what I remembered from the beginning was what my mental state was and kind of the pros and cons when I went into it. So I kind of understood, tried to remember how I felt when I made that decision. And it made me feel better when it didn't work out because I was like, that got me off the hook. I didn't regret it. I would have made the same decision 10 times in a row.
Sure.
It was a learning experience. I get that. But I took away from it as a learning experience. So I don't worry. I'm a little bit risk averse, I guess, is because when I make a decision, I just try to think like, okay, here's why I made that decision. And that way I know I'm not going to come back and regret it.
Sure.
I'm going to remember like, I may think, oh, I didn't have enough information. I didn't have the right information when I made that decision, but I did the best I could with what I had. And I think that's important to not get too down on yourself, to try to stay positive.
Yeah, I think that change in perspective is very valuable. I think if you have the ability to do that, a lot of people, it's not a failure if you learn something, right? You have that, but also if you can put in perspective of where you were at in that moment when you made that decision, I do believe that that's a really good kind of mindset shift to kind of not necessarily let yourself off the hook, but at least give you some, peace about it.
Yes, some relief. If you had to beat yourself up for every bad decision, you're going to spend more time feeling bad about yourself than you are.
Absolutely. Good. All right, so let's jump into rapid fire.
Let's do it.
So, what is something that most people don't know about you?
I'm a closet environmentalist.
Okay.
Hardcore. Yeah. So I have electric cars and solar panels on my house, and ride the sunrail every day, and vegetarian, all that sort of stuff. Which is a little bit strange when you look at our profession.
Sure.
We wreck the environment as badly as anybody. And I'm not that I'm necessarily making up for it, but maybe in my next life, my purpose will be on the other side of things to like help correct some of the destruction that I've helped cause.
Sure. When are you the most productive?
Sunday afternoons from about 4:00 to 7:00 in the evening.
Really?
Yeah. I love getting a start on the week. I don't like to start flat-footed on Monday morning, and that's just a great time. Office is empty.
What's something new happening in your life?
Let my hair grow out.
That's
which
been
is
a long
man
time.
bun. Yeah. It's new to me. But they say you dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So maybe I'm going to be a pirate or a drummer in an 80s rock band. Yeah. Who knows? I can't wait.
What advice would you give your younger self?
I would ask more questions of people. Just try to learn more, be more observative of the environment around me. I'd like to. I probably should have networked a little bit more, gone out there and try to meet more people.
Yeah. What's something that scares you?
I don't get scared that often, but I have 3 kids, that are terrifying to me just to think about their safety and stuff. That's probably the one thing that, would keep me up at night.
I would imagine that would be your inspiration as well.
Yeah. Yeah. They are definitely. I've got a lot of good family members that are inspirational. I have a twin brother. He just ran an ultra marathon.
Oh, wow.
Which, leads me to believe that maybe I should be able to do that too, right? We're identical twins. So, supposedly the same, but he is a different mental state than I do. So I'm training, but we'll see if it happens.
Maybe you might have picked up that gene.
I did, I did the Ancestry or 23andMe thing, and there is a gene for it. And apparently I do have it. Maybe I don't have the will for it. I don't know what that is. He does. He crushes it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Describe yourself in 5 words.
Holy cow. I'm introspective. I like to think calculating, certainly empathetic. I learned a new word the other day, equanimous. It means calm. I do kind of like to keep a level of, just, the office can get kind of frantic, right? It's easy to get your emotions up. But everybody likes a low drama office environment. So I try to stick with that.
Absolutely. If you could ask or tell God one thing, what would it be?
Why? Why me? Why us? Why now? I'm very interested in the why.
Can you dive into that a little bit?
There's just so many unknowns. I try not to spend too much time thinking about it because it will there'll be paralysis by analysis, right?
Absolutely.
It'll freeze you in your shoes. But I'm always interested in what has all brought us together here in this big spinning ball in the middle of nowhere.
Sure.
I don't know if we'll ever know the answers to that, so maybe that's why I don't dive into it too much. But yeah, I'm sure there's a reason.
Yeah.
Right? There has to be.
Absolutely. I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
So, Clark, it was great sitting down
Thank
with
you so
man.
much.
I really appreciate your time.
Been fun.
Beyond the Blueprint, this has been episode 2 with Clark Stranahan at C4 Architecture. Make sure you like and subscribe for our next episodes. There's plenty more to come. I assure you that. See you next time.